Our guest today is an award-winning actress, filmmaker, artist, and author. She wrote and directed After Emma, starring Amy Smart. She wrote and directed and starred in the drama It Happened Again Last Night, co-starring Sydney Sweeney. She has appeared in the films Swell, Speak No Evil, Zombie Killers, Elephant's Graveyard. She was a feature filmmaker at the 2019 Film Fest LA Live, Kash Hovey and Friends film block. She currently hosts the podcast FML Talk, based off of her true experience from her best-selling book, Eat, Pray, FML. Please welcome Gabrielle Stone.
What an intro. Thank you. It's so good to be here.
It is so good to be here, Gabrielle. How are you? I miss being out and about. I miss running into you at events. And
I know. I
strange
feel
year.
like we used to run into each other at every event we went to, and now it's been non-existent. So I'm good. I'm powering through 2020 like we all did, and staying busy with the podcast and book stuff. So it's been a wild ride to kind of deviate into author land from acting land.
Exactly. You know, I did start your book right at the beginning.
Yay!
Yes. I went to your signing and your event to celebrate the release. And
Yes.
I started it, right before the pandemic, and it got me through that first month. And it was just really such a fascinating story. And I know we've talked to you about this before, but just the way that you describe your experiences, the way that you're open, what you're going through just resonates so well. And I mean, people have reviewed it, it's hit them on a personal level. And I just thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love hearing when guys read the book. It's always, because heartbreak and grief is universal. It's not just written for females. And I really love when people can read it and connect with it. And, like you said, that it got you through that first month. That means the world to me. So thank you for coming on the journey.
Absolutely. So let's take people through the story. You got married very young. You were starting your career. You found something out. You investigated, and then you revealed that there was a secret. You met someone, fell in love. You thought you were starting this new chapter. Last minute, something occurs, and then you had to go on this journey alone. And it was just the way that you describe it, the journey you embark on. That's your story, and the plane you got on. I remember when you posted that picture, and it was just
Yeah.
when I read it, I'm like, all that was happening at that moment, because I remember where I was. And then it's like, oh my God, I had no idea. Just the story was fascinating. You took this epic journey to Europe to really discover yourself.
Yeah, that trip really changed my life. I mean, as you said, I was married for almost 2 years. I found out that he was having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months, filed for divorce, left, met another guy, fell madly in love, had this whirlwind romance, and he convinced me to go on a month-long trip to Italy with him. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, told me he needed to go by himself. And I was devastated, broke my heart like my ex-husband never could have done. But I had a decision to make, and that was either stay at home heartbroken or go travel Europe for a month by myself. So I took a backpack and did 6 countries over the span of a month and wrote 3/4 of Eat, Pray, FML by hand in my journal on that trip. And it really changed my entire life on so many ways. It helped me heal from a lot of long stemming childhood traumas that I had been carrying with me throughout my life. And it also gave me an entirely different career that I never would have dreamed of. So it really, I'm a walking example of everything happens for a reason.
Well put. Just how your book begins and why I feel connected on a level was you do talk about losing your father at a very young age in the opening. And it's just really what that experience was like. And just even when you talk about being a kid and just your recollection of it, and like there were moments in my life where it was like, I remember just Saturday morning cartoons, a day seems normal. And it's those little details you put in your story that really resonate. And then when you talk about that impact on you and then the experiences that followed, and then it was looking at what you had to embark on, you write, you direct, I just feel like you're someone who takes those losses and you apply it to your work, and you've given people hope and inspiration and a symbol of strength.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that I was very lucky to have the mother that I had. She not only in that moment, when my father passed, showed me how to handle life when it crumbles in front of you and how to persevere and be a true badass through that. I was alone. Well, not alone. I was with my dad and my nanny at the time that he passed, and I walked in and found him lying on the floor. My mom was in New Zealand shooting The Frighteners. She was obviously on the next plane home and came back for a week. We had his celebration of life, and she got all the affairs in order, and we got back on a plane, her and my nanny and I, and flew back, and she finished the film because that's what you do. It was around 12 or 13 when I started having like my angsty teenage years begin. And there was one moment where she looked at me and she was like, look, you can grieve and be sad and deal with your dad's death as long as you need to, but you're not going to be a victim about it anymore. You're not going to use that as an excuse. And that was a really pivotal moment for me, because I think when we go through things in our lives, we get to a crossroads and it's like, are we going to take that victim road, or are we going to understand what's happened to us and like make that into something and like become something from that and not let that define us? It can be part of our story, but it can't define us moving forward. So that was really huge for me to get that lesson at an early age, because if I would have taken the victim route, I mean, I would have crumbled when my 2017 happened for sure.
When I see your work or listen to your show and even reading your book, there's just a lot of strengths that you've had that I just feel like only recently I've been able to really confront. We've known each other for a while. I've occasionally things come up in the conversation. It was really around the time I met you. I just had a moment where I was just changing my life. So many things made sense to me, and I didn't realize how much baggage I had that I neglected to really confront. You know, when you're going through the motions and you're just totally lifeless. And then it really was a few things that happened along the way, loss of friends at certain times to unfortunate deaths and circumstances. And then also in the intro of the book, you mentioned you had lost your dear friend, Jake. And that, like hearing that, it was, and I know I shared that with you at one point, but it was like that summer, like in August when that happened, a month before I had an arrhythmia. And it was like, that was like the conclusion of like a few friends had passed away. I was at Northridge. I know you went to Northridge. So I feel like it was like, I'm reading this and I'm like, she's like, the same things are happening. We're in the same space. And then this chapter is so connecting with me. And it was like, literally, I mean, I was out. I remembered having an out of body experience and then just waking up like nothing happened. And fortunately, there
Wow.
was a defibrillator there, and but it was just after years of just spending, I just felt like I was self-loathing. I was just so depressed, but I got up, I went to work, I went to school, I did all these things, but I didn't realize how much I was crumbling and how that one event really made me reevaluate things. And then fast forward a few years later, it's like, I was always trying to be, I just hadn't reached my full potential. So like when I read so I felt the last 7 years was like, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to film festivals. I'm going to start networking. I'm going to really like, make some stuff happen. And then when the pandemic happened, I was just starting to journal. I finally began reading your book, and it just really, there were just those chapters that that had been there with me. And I was just ready for so many things that come full circle. You and I had the film festival at LA Live. Another one of your brilliant films was featured in there after Emma. And while I was reading your book, Gabrielle makes everything so clear. I had finished your book. I'd been seeing a therapist for about 7 years to really get to what was happening on the inside. And then someone I was close with who had similar experiences that I had, and we bonded over that a lot. He had unfortunately passed away as well. And I just remembered it was like, of course, I went through my grief, but then it was my therapist and I talked about him and talked about our experiences growing up. And it was just like, there was that moment after I came out of my shock and grief that day, I was like, you know what, I'm strong. And then it was like, after reading this book, Gabrielle made it so clear what it is. And I felt like by then so your book really helped me cope through that really dark period. And I didn't fall into any old habits. And it was just like, how do I get on with my life? How do I acknowledge what we had? And it still hurts. Thank you for writing this. It really helped me through that.
Oh, that's amazing. That right there is why it makes all of what I went through worth it, is to be able to have other people read my story and take different things out of it. And it's so interesting to me because so many people that read it are like, oh, this helped me heal from my heartbreak, or oh, this helped me, leave an abusive relationship, or this helped me love myself. But to hear that it helped you connect with the ways to grieve and to move through that and to not fall into those old habits is really amazing for me to hear. And when I lost my high school sweetheart, it was really sudden. It was in a car accident that happened and nobody saw it coming. I mean, you never see those things coming. And it was it was an interesting thing for me to go through that because it was ripping open that same wound that I experienced when I lost my father. So when I lost my father, it was fear of abandonment, like when I love someone, they die. And then, my first big puppy love of my life, my high school sweetheart that I was with for 3 years, is killed in a car accident. And it's like, oh, okay, great. So when I love someone, they die. And that was like reaffirmed in me. And I think that when we deal with big traumatic life events like that, it instills a lot of subconscious beliefs in us. And the way that fear of abandonment manifested in my life personally was not wanting to be alone and always wanting to have a roommate, or I had a boyfriend. Like I was never really alone. And when I found out that I was going to be going on this trip by myself, it was like, yeah, the universe is going to go give you a way to face that shit head on, Gabrielle. So like buckle up in the biggest way possible. And it really did. It forced me to not only know that I was okay by myself and enjoy being by myself, but really instilled in me how absolutely capable I am by myself. And that was really life changing for me.
When you have some like the books, like I'm going to write the book. And then I remember you just kind of flirting with the idea of, should I do a podcast? You put it out there and then you follow through with it. And believe me, I used to procrastinate, or sometimes things happen to you as a kid and you just have this memory. You mentioned you lost tragically in a car accident. It was just when I had lost my childhood best friend when we were kids to unfortunately, he ended up getting involved in the wrong crowd. He joined a gang. And so I lost him once at 15. And then I remember it was like Thanksgiving 4 years later. And I got a call that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he was tragically shot down. And it was, it was just one of those things. Like, I just remember at the time, I was so mad at him for choosing that because he had so much potential. Like we used to make movies. There was a point when he was smart and then he was just, and then as I got older, I was able to understand the pain that he was going through at home,
Yeah.
and it makes more sense to you. But right around the same time, well, when we were like 15, it was kind of like, Cash, you go that way, or then there's this older crowd kind of calling you, and you're like, oh, everyone here is successful. They're telling you you're cool, but then you don't realize that when you're in those adult situations at a young age, and just, I mean, I would say like from a guy's perspective, for a 15-year-old boy, you're kind of like, I got to be cool. I got to feel like I fit in. And you're at that awkward age where, girls are starting to pay attention to you. And then you don't realize the situations that you're getting put in. And you think, oh, he's a guy, he's supposed to take care, or he's supposed to be able to handle this. And I feel like that's what my friend was going through at home. And so he chose his path, but then about a week after he had passed away, there was a friend that I had in that world that I wasn't speaking to anymore. And then she tragically dies in a car
Oh
accident.
my God.
And then that was another thing of like, just wait to, and then a year later, there was another person in that crowd. He had a heart attack, passed away, and then I die. But then I came back. So so there is that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like, why am I here? Why were they in my life? I'm so afraid to get close to people because I'm just afraid when I get to I feel like everyone I've been close to, those tragedies, they stick out. And again, like your book and your strength, breaking the patterns, going to Europe, and then just, you come back and, we were just texting while you were in Hawaii and about coming on the show. And you were just like, and I just totally respected and got it. You're like, I'm in my zone. We're doing it right. When I get back, and it's just like, no, I get it. Now, like, I wish I could be in Hawaii, but that's the charge, and that's what I get from your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I definitely resonate with what you're saying about, the fear of being close to people. And when I started dating my boyfriend now, obviously he is 15 years older than me, 14 and a half, depending on the time of year. And he's got a lot of similarities to my dad, not in like a weird, creepy way, but like his essence and just a lot of like qualities about him. And so of course I went into like that fear of like, oh God, but like that means he's going to die. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and she looked at me and she's like, Gabrielle, I think at the time I was still 30. She's like, you're 30. You could walk outside tomorrow and get hit by a bus. Like it's not about people's age. It's not about like, it's when it's your time, as unfair as it may seem to those around us, I fully believe that my dad, knew he was going to go at an early age, and I personally believe that we kind of like are contracted and like decide on that before we even come into this life. And I don't really think that things happen by mistake. They can be tragic, but I think that we're all here to learn certain lessons. And if my dad hadn't have passed, I can guarantee you I would be a very, very, very different person than I am now. So I think it's about finding all the little lessons and moments and important tidbits through the tragedies.
Absolutely. Occasionally there's just kind of people throwing the signs in there, just having
Yeah,
it there.
and I think there's signs everywhere. You just have to be open to seeing them.
Yes.
I think a lot of times people are like, oh, that's just coincidence, or oh, that's just, there's no such thing as coincidence. And I've had so many signs in my life that like you can't refute. Like you wouldn't be able to sit here and be like, oh, that's just like just happened to go that way. It's like, no. And I think it gives us some comfort, especially when you have people that are on the other side. And, you know, when things have happened, that when you get those signs and recognize them, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm on the right path. Like I'm being looked out for. Everything's going to be all right.
Definitely. And no, Gabrielle, I can't thank you enough for this story. These are the comments that people have written. I mean, we got Tori Spelling right here says, even with 5 kids, I could not put this book down. I don't think I've ever read something more raw, relatable, and wildly entertaining. For anyone who's gone through love, divorce, heartbreak, or needs to learn to love themselves and take their damn power back, read this book. Bolded by Tori Spelling.
Yeah.
We have another review. Reading this book has absolutely inspired me. These are words of pure truth. To say I needed to read this is an understatement. I'm so thankful for this book and how it opened my eyes about myself and about my relationships. I'm ready to see it on the big screen. Scout Taylor Compton.
Oh, I love that. It's really amazing that there's been celebrities that have read this and resonated with and connected with it. But the real amazing reviews and messages that I read are the people that don't know me and nobody knows from like all over the world. I get messages, but that DM me or write a review that's like, this really healed me and changed me. And it's been it's been the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done in my life. And that all came from tragedy that made me feel like my life was over.
Well, Gabrielle, you are an inspiration to us all. I mean, you definitely made me look at my life better. I started reading this book. I feel like I've accomplished more. I feel like every time we cross paths, whether it's I see one of your films or after having just read this book, you definitely open up my eyes. You inspired me. And I thank you for just your friendship and being here. And just really, I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, I so appreciate that. And I'm so happy that it resonated with you and connected on some level with you. And thank you for all that you do. You've always been so supportive, and I so feel that and appreciate that. And thank you for having me on, dude.
You rock, Gabrielle. Thank you.
If anyone's interested in reading the book, you can get it on Amazon. It's Eat, Pray, FML, or you can get it on the website, eatprayfml.com. I have signed copies on there, and that'll link you to the podcast, FML Talk, and all the other goodies that we've got.
You heard it. Get her book on Amazon, follow her on Instagram, and tune into her talk show, FML Talk, available on Spotify and iTunes. Gabrielle, thank you. You continue to be an inspiration. Really, just thank you so much for being here again.
You're so welcome, dude. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me and Gabrielle Stone. You are on air with Kash.